So, and explore some application on the internet. We are going to look at uh, first domain name system. So let's write down domain name system, or in short, we say DNS. And under domain name system, we are going to discuss how DNS is used to convert web addresses into IP addresses. Now, usually web addresses for us, because we can easily remember, for example, we can have www.google.com, but it should convert into IP address so that computers can connect and understand. But computers understand only ones and zero. That means we need to identify each of the computers in some numerical way. So we have to have IP addresses. Now, let me show you how this is, for example, done in computer. For example, I will take a command line. In command line, if I say something like ipconfig, sorry, ping, let's say we are going to check where the Google is. Now, when you try to ping, what happens? It's try to communicate with the web server where Google is hosted. But to computer to reach this, so first of all, it will connect with the domain name system. So when I enter this, you will see now we are getting some outputs from the internet, right? So this is the typical pinging page we will get it. The idea is, communicating with the Google web server. Now, so we can say when we have google.com, when you want to use it, so we can say that, okay, it will translate the number into IP address. So we can say when you say translate in Google, so it will, put into IP address form, right? Something like this. So that's the first thing we need to discuss. Now, how the communication happens. We have users and we have DNS. The request goes in. So if I put a graphic which describe this one, it look like this. So let's say this is the user which try to connect to google.com. So whenever person wants to contact Google, first of all, it has to go to the DNS server, where DNS server maintain a list of domain names and respective IP addresses. So when you send the request, it goes to google.com, and then it will find the relevant IP address, send it back, and using that one, we request the content using the IP address, which connects to the Google web server, and then you will get the content back. So this is normally what will happen when you access a website. So when you talk about the domain names, we can use to identify the computers on the internet. Now, for example, in previous one, we have seen uh, how to connect to google.com. So the domain name for Google is www.google.com, right? So we use these to identify computers. And then if you carefully look at the address, you have several labels. Starting from www, we have Google and then .com, right? So usually we have several labels. And when you look at the label from right to left, so right side, you have the top level domain. Now, when you say www.google.com, the com is what we know as top level domain, right? So whatever comes to the left, we can say these are like, subdomains. Okay, so we can talk about domain names. So under the domain names, we can say that a domain name we can use to identify computers on the internet, and you have several labels, right? And then the rightmost one, we can say it's the top level domain. And whatever comes after, it's subdomain. So let me take another example. So let's say we'll take Peradeniya University website and their web address. So when you look at Peradeniya web address, the address start with www.pdn.ac.lk. Right. So here we can see the address contains couple of things, www.pdn.ac.lk. So when you have like this, we have the right hand side, we have top level domain, which is called .lk, which represents Sri Lanka. And when you go to the left, we have AC, which indicates that academic institutions in Sri Lanka. So it's within LK. And under the academic institutions, we have Peradeniya University, which is, we can consider as a domain name, right? So this is some hierarchy we will have. Now, when you say top level domain, we can say these are the highest level. And then we can have these domains depend on different commercial specific industries or geographical locations and so on. Now, let me give you some examples. Now, there's a domain, usually we have .com, like google.com. So .com indicates that it's a commercial institute. And if you take .org, which you usually use for government institute, sorry, ORG is for non-profit organizations or organizations like Dalda Maligav, .org is considered as a generic top level domain. And then under the same generic top level domains, we have .net. For example, in .net is used for networking institutes. For example, we can say www.lankacom.net, like some internet connectivity providers. Then recently we have got domains like info for information and .biz for business and so on. And then they have country specific codes. We call country code top level domains like Sri Lanka, for example, we have .lk. India, we have .in. America, we have .us. So it's like for country specific domains are there. We call country code top level domains. Right? Then apart from that, for specific organizations, there are like top level domains. For example, .edu, we use for education institutes, .gov, gov for government agencies, and sometimes .mil, military organizations and so on. Right, so let's write down some domains under this. So let's write down some top level domains. So under the top level domains, I'm going to discuss a couple of domains available. So in this, for example, we can talk about domain with some description of what we have, and then with some example. Right. So let me put some examples. So as you can see, we have some domains are listed here. Let me give you a description. The .com is for commercial institutes, and example is google.com, and then .edu for education institutes, then networking institutes, then government institutes. .org usually we use for organizations, non-profit organizations like the. And then I also discuss like there are specific country codes. So these are only examples only. There are about like 200 plus country codes are used. And then I also told you like the recent one like .info is for information, .biz is for business and so on. So in this one, we were discussing about the top level domains, and we know that the rightmost label is considered as the top level domain, and depending on that label, it belongs to different parties. Like for example, .com for commercial institutes, .gov for government institutes, .lk for country specific code and so on. Right. Now the next part we are going to look at uh, HTTP protocol. Now we know that uh, when you talk about the communication, when we talk about the hypertext transfer protocol, there are many protocols we use. So protocol in the sense uh, uh, the way of communicating like two computers together. So in hypertext transfer protocol, it transmitting hypertext documents or web pages, and the the rules of how to communicate each other will determine using this protocol. Right. Now let's write down. We have hypertext transfer protocol. Or in short, we say HTTP. Right. Now, when you talk about the hypertext transfer protocol, and simply the idea is it'll talk about how to transmit HTML pages. And basically, the protocol is used in World Wide Web. Right? Um, so simply the protocol is used for communication on the World Wide Web, and it transmit uh, hypertext document between a web browser, web server, and a browser, right? So let's write down. It is used to transmit between a web server and a web browser. So the next thing that we are going to discuss is about the client server model, which you can see the two types of computers available in the internet. Now, client, uh, computers we request for different services. Like for example, through a web browser, we request web pages and we access emails. Basically, we are, requesting services. And servers, on the other hand, servers provide services for clients. So web server provide web pages, email server provide emails, file server provides files, right? So servers are responsible for providing these services. So we can say that, okay, we have two types of computers, client and servers, and clients make requests for services. So if you need a web page, HTML pages, you request from web servers. If you need emails, you request from email servers. If you need files, you request from file servers. So with this topic, we finish the section explore applications on the internet. We looked at DNS, domain name system, and we also discussed the details of domain names with some common top-level domains. Then we discuss hypertext transfer protocol and client-server model. Now we came to the next section. So in the next section, we are going to discuss what we call the reference models to describe network architecture. What it means, like when two computers communicate each other, there are different layers which the data transmit. Now, the lowest layer, we know through the network, we are transmitting ones and zeros. But the problem is then we have to figure out how these ones and zeros will, this transmission happens to different application. So for a given time, we might communicate with multiple, places, multiple computers. And then when we receive the data might come from multiple places. We need to figure out which application requires the data comes in. So to understand this, we need to understand, architecture of the network, right? So the topic is, we have 6.10. We are going to investigate the role of what we call the reference models, right? To simplify our discussion, we need to discuss what models we will have. So that is our topic, next one. Right. So make a note of this. So this is our new section. Okay, right. Now, when you talk about reference model, so simply we will talk about two types of models. We will say TCP/IP model. I will explain what this is. Or we call transmission control protocol um, and internet protocol. Right. So let's start with the first one. The first one, we are going to talk about transmission control protocol, internet protocol, or in short, we say TCP/IP model. Right. So let's start with that one. So our first one is called the TCP/IP, or we say transmission and control internet protocol model. Right. Now let's discuss the details. Now, when we say transmission control protocol or internet protocol, now this you have a set of protocols which we can use to communicate on the internet, and especially with other computers. And especially this protocol, this model is actually the basis for the internet. And it has 4 layers. We have application, transport, then we have network, and then we have link. Okay, so when we talk about transmission control protocol, internet protocol model, the first thing is we have to discuss 4 types of layers available, right? So the first one is we need to have 4 layers, and the first layer, or on top, we have applications. We can say application layer. So that is one. And the second one we can talk about is, we normally say it's transport layer. Then under that, we can talk about internet layer. Under that, finally, we can have network access layer. Right? So these are the 4 layers of transmission control protocol model. So in TCP/IP model, we discussed there are 4 layers. These layers are starting from top, we have application layer, then we have transport layer, then we have internet layer, then finally we have network access layer. Now, let's start from the bottom. Now, first of all, what is network access layer? So that is the lowest of the TCP/IP model, which is responsible for communicating between computers, right? And then you usually use responsible for transmitting data, and you also give access to the hardware. And also it transmit as uh, physical transmission. So let's write down that. So under that, we are going to have first network access layer. Right. The first thing that we need to discuss is so first one we said the network access layer. So under that we can say uh, it allows physical transmission of data, right? And delivery data to other devices. And it maps IP addresses to physical addresses. So we can write down about network access layer that it is physical transmission. Right. The next one is internet layer. Okay, you can take down this and then we can, right. The next layer is we call internet layer, and you have, it is responsible for logical transmission, the messages, and then it uses a different set of, it uses some protocols like internet protocol, internet control message protocol, and then address resolution protocol. And simply the idea of using the internet layer is it handles the addressing as well as delivery of the data. Now, the next one we are going to discuss is called transport layer. And in this layer, what happens, it talks about end-to-end communication and error-free delivery, which means we have to confirm whether we have received data appropriately. Now, there are two protocols we are mainly using. It is called transmission control protocol and user datagram protocol. Okay, so the last layer we call, on top of it, we have application level, and it communicate with different applications and different protocols needed to make different communication. Now, couple of protocols are there. The first one, hypertext transfer protocol, which is used for transmitting web pages. Then file transfer protocol, or in short, we say FTP, simply transferring files between the computers. Then we have simple mail transfer protocol, or SMTP, for sending and receiving emails. Then we have domain name system, DNS, for translating domain names to IP addresses. Whenever you want to access some resources in the internet, you have to go through the domain system to get the IP address of the server, and then you make the communication. Then there are a couple of other protocols as well. Telnet is like remote login. you can log into hosts, and SNMP is when you want to monitor or manage your network.